And with that, welcome to College Football Wraparound. I'm Cooper Naylor, and today joining me is Colton Naylor. How you doing, Colton? And it looks like you may have some technical difficulties early.
Hello,
And there's Colton. How you doing, Colton?
I'm good.
All right, we are here today for the college football playoff rankings. Of course, the first reveal of that is not till next week. So, what we're doing today is we're going to unveil, which has already been unveiled, the AP rankings, and just kind of go over what we think about it. And then later in the halfway through the show, we are going to recap Week 8's games, and we're going to go into this upcoming week's games in Week 9 of the college football season. That is what's coming up here on Saber Broadcast Network. Hope that you enjoyed your little commercial there at the beginning. They at the people at PC and More Gifts worked hard on that, so we thank them. As you can see, the rankings at the bottom, and of course I'm going to pull that up on my phone right now so you can get a feel for what is going on. So number 1 is Georgia, number 2 Cincinnati, number 3 Alabama, 4 is Oklahoma, 5 Ohio State, 6 Michigan, 7 Oregon, 8 Michigan State, 9 Iowa. At 10 you got Ole Miss, 11 Notre Dame, 12 Kentucky, 13 Wake Forest, 14 Texas A&M. At 15 you got Oklahoma State. At 16 Baylor, 17 Pitt, 18 Auburn, 19 SMU, 20 Penn State, 21 San Diego State, 22 Iowa State, 23 UTSA, 24 Coastal Carolina, and 25 BYU. And of course you can see it there at the bottom. So I want to ask you first of all, Colton, what is your opinion on the rankings? Do you like it, or do you think that it's not fair about one or another team?
I think it's a little bit biased
Okay. Which way?
because they dropped Oklahoma behind Alabama, and I don't think they should have done it.
I agree. Clearly Oklahoma is an unbeaten team. Alabama already lost a game at A&M, and I mean, relatively, did Alabama and Oklahoma, did one of them actually look better than each other from last week's games? Because if you look at it,
They
Bama,
both struggled.
with 9 minutes left in the game, Bama was up 31-24 and of course scored 3 touchdowns near the end of the game and put the game away. So, does Alabama really look like a better team than Oklahoma right now? I don't really know, unless the media, the media is essentially who votes for the AP rankings. Essentially, I think that Oklahoma may be getting an unfair shake just because people think the quarterback change or something. What do you think? Why do you think that Oklahoma has fallen behind Alabama?
I think because overall they've struggled more than Alabama, although Oklahoma's better because they've won more games.
I tend to agree. I mean,
And there's a lot of better teams than Alabama and Oklahoma both. So if one's going to drop, they both should drop.
okay. And that brings me to a question that you just brought up about there are teams that are better than Alabama and Oklahoma. Could you explain to me who maybe is better at this time?
Well, I think Notre Dame is definitely one of them that's at least in the conversation being better.
Okay. So you've got Notre Dame ahead of Alabama and Oklahoma. That's your opinion right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to know, as far as Notre Dame, um, give me an example of a big win that you think they've had so far.
Well, it doesn't really matter how many big wins they've had. It just matters that their loss was a more respectable loss than Alabama's.
Okay. Um. So let's bring this up. Okay, Alabama went on the road, lost on a game-winning field goal by Texas A&M on a Saturday night, October 9th, which was it was an incredible game. And then Notre Dame was it? I think was it that same day they got beat to Cincinnati.
No, it was.
I
I think
I don't
a week
recall.
or two. Was it a week or two before? I think it was a week or two before.
Okay,
Once I
but
called that game.
well, I do see your point right now because Cincinnati is an undefeated team. They're ranked at number 2 ahead of Alabama and Oklahoma at this time. And I could see where that loss is probably better just based off of Cincinnati, undefeated team. A&M is a 2-loss team so far. Of course, A&M lost to Arkansas at Jerry's World, which was I mean, you go look at it, that was a pretty good game. And if you look at the loss, it wasn't that bad of a loss at the time. But for A&M, of course, that Mississippi State game where they basically got pounded was not a great game for A&M. So, as far as Oklahoma though, they're undefeated. Do you think they should be? Do you think? Okay, you said Notre Dame's probably better than them. Do you think Oklahoma goes ahead of Notre Dame right now?
Uh, Probably because they are an undefeated team. I think if an undefeated team is undefeated, I think they should be the top teams, and no matter who they beat or how, like, their schedule, I think if you're undefeated, you should be in the top uh, category, and the teams that have lost should be lower. Like SMU, who's undefeated, they should be in the top just because they're undefeated. I don't think it should depend on your schedule or because they've still went out and won all their games they play, and it's pretty deep into the season.
And I agree with you. I think at this point you've gotten to a point in the season where you kind of now you know what everybody's like at this point. So, I mean, at this time it's hard to say that a team like you take a like you SMU and they're not ranked higher. I mean, I think for SMU standpoint though, let's say they do go undefeated and then they play Cincinnati and beat them. That would be like a signature win, and you could possibly say SMU, if you're undefeated, they have a chance for the playoff
Mhm.
because of that signature win against Cincinnati. Who Cincinnati, of course, I mean that's a good win if you're SMU if you beat Cincinnati. Wouldn't you have to agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so um, I do see your point. Of course, a big game coming up this week: 6 Michigan and 8 Michigan State. That is a huge game for the Big Ten. That's game of the week this week for us here at Saber Broadcast Network. That is our game of the week: Michigan and Michigan State. Of course, the game will be played at East Lansing, and on it's going to be on national television. Big game. So bring me bring me through what you think about Michigan and Michigan State this season. Do you think that they're appropriately ranked, or do you feel like they deserve to be a little higher?
I think it's a good game. I think it's decent on the ranking for them, number 6, and I don't know how Michigan State is, but I think they're pretty appropriately ranked. I think that they should have them, like I said, the undefeated should be the top teams, and the teams that have lost should not.
Okay. Um. So going over the rankings, the team that maybe is getting overshadowed, who is the rival of Michigan and Michigan State, is the team just ahead of Michigan, and that is Ohio State. I mean, people are just now starting to talk about them after their loss to Oregon.
Yeah.
Um, do you feel like Ohio State, now that they've lost a game, do you feel like now they went from a team that everybody was hunting to now they're another team that they're the hunters? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're a good team. I think that Ohio State kind of gets a bit overhyped because they're not necessarily a great team. It's more of they've been a historic franchise, and because of that, they get ranked higher than, like I said, SMU.
Okay. Well, of course, there's a lot of teams in this rankings. Um, okay, Wake Forest is another example of an undefeated team.
Yeah,
Um, you talk about Wake Forest. They went to Army this past week, and of course, they had that shootout against Army, and I mean, that was an unexpected game because you never see a team like Army put up 56 points. Um, Let me get your opinion, Calden. Do you think Wake Forest deserves to be higher in the rankings?
yeah. Like I said, if you're undefeated, you should be a top team. And if you've
Okay.
been defeated, you can still be a top team, but you should not be like the number one team should not be like one loss. You know?
Well, right now, Georgia is the number one team, undefeated,
Mhm.
and looking to stay undefeated this week after coming off a bye week, and they're going to play in Jacksonville against Florida. That's a big game coming up this weekend. Of course, we still got a couple days until
That's
these
not.
matchups.
I wouldn't say Florida versus Georgia is a big game because it's a really good team versus a decent team that I think gets, like I said, just like Ohio State, I think they get overhyped because of their franchise, not because of how good they might be, just because of the franchise that they are.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes to continue on this one segment, and then we'll go to, well, we've kind of already been reacting, so I guess we got the whole, first 30 minutes to this. But, um, you look at teams that have looked good this season, and you look at the rankings so far, and um, is there a team you feel like that is not in the top 25 that may deserve a top 25 ranking?
Well, I don't know exactly who, but there are plenty of teams that I've watched this season. Like at one point, Texas. I mean, you watch them and they played well, but they haven't exactly lived up to the hype. So then they just get unranked because they haven't lived up to the hype that they were supposed to get in the off season. I think that's a bit unfair, and that they should be ranked. Like teams like Texas a couple weeks ago. And there are teams that I watched that are unranked, and I'm just confused why they are unranked.
Okay, I do here on my right here on my phone, I've got teams that were dropped from the rankings, and then also teams that are receiving votes to get into the rankings effective this week. So dropped from the rankings. NC State, of course, went to Miami, lost, of course. They were number 18, dropped from the rankings. Purdue was 25, lost at home to Wisconsin. They're dropped after a 1 week stay. And then teams receiving votes: Arkansas, Louisiana, NC State, Houston, Virginia, Oregon State, Arizona State, Texas, Appalachian State, Florida, Minnesota, and UCLA. So I do want to ask you if you think that, do you think the rankings has a bit of a bias towards SEC and Big Ten teams?
Well, yeah, I think it's gonna be like that sometimes because they're mainstream conferences. As for like the Pac-12, or I guess Pac-10, I get confused between.
Pac-12.
But anyway, they always like the Sun Belt. They always get dropped out of the rating rankings because of the conference that they're in, not because of the teams or how they're doing or what. It's because of the conference.
Okay, and I'll bring up NC State, who I believe at this point is a team. They're 5-2 right now. So I mean, and you look in regards to in the rankings right now. Um, I mean, you've got quite a few 5-2 teams that is, well, two-loss teams that, I mean, you could question it. Well, A&M, I don't think you can really question. They're a good team. And then Auburn is kind of questionable because we don't know exactly who is one of their top wins right now. Of course, Penn State just got, I mean, they got beat bad by Illinois in a 9 overtime game. It was a brutal game there. And then you have Iowa State. I mean, I don't disagree, but BYU. Do you okay? Do you do we think that NC State is better than BYU, or do we think BYU's better than NC State? Where do you think?
I think NC State, since they beat Clemson, I think they're better than BYU, but I think they should both be ranked.
Okay.
I think Coastal or UTSA should be taken out of the rankings.
Now UTSA, I can say they're undefeated, 8-0 at 23 right now.
Yes.
For me, I think it's going to be hard to take them out. I think Coastal Carolina would be the team I would replace.
Yeah, because
with
they
being a
lost that
one-loss
game
team.
that they seriously should have won against
Yeah,
App.
and they lost on the last second field goal against Appalachian State. So, and you just look at the teams that can potentially get in to the rankings, and and there's still quite a few weeks left in the season, you know. So, I mean, do we really believe that this is the best way the rankings could go? No. But next Tuesday night, we'll be here. We'll be talking about the CFP rankings. And, of course, let me tell you, CFP rankings, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot different. Where do you think that this top 25 will be any kind of comparison to what we're going to see next week from the CFP?
I think maybe.
In what regards?
I think overall, the teams that are in right now, I think that they deserve possibly to be in the CFP.
Okay. And that leads me to ask you, Cincinnati. They're a wild card right now as far as in regards to where is the CFP going to go with them when the rankings do come out, because Cincinnati, I mean, they're a group of 5 team. Do you think that people are overlooking Cincinnati as good as they are? I mean, do you think that they're looking at it as, okay, they're going to be a Power 5 team, so why don't we start giving them a little more recognition? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they might be a little overrated, but you have to look at it. They beat Notre Dame, which is a good team, and honestly, Cincinnati's just been a really good team the past couple years. I think they deserve to be where they are.
Okay. And then in regards to Ohio State and Alabama, I mean, I got a question. Do you think the winner of Michigan and Michigan State potentially would be put in the first top 4 of the season? Do you think that would happen?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Explain to me how come you don't think Michigan and Michigan State would be put into the first top 4?
I don't think they need to because I'm not really a fan of Michigan. So it's hard for me to say that they're a really good school because I'm not really a big fan of Michigan.
Okay, but put away not liking them. Do you think that like the winner of that game? I mean, of course, with it being undefeated versus undefeated, that's going to be a big win for either team. Do
Yeah.
you think that
I
do you think that the winner of the game should deserve to be in there, being an undefeated team?
probably yes.
Okay,
Which I think Michigan State will win that game though.
Michigan State. Okay, so you think Mel Tucker's team will pull it out? But of course, we'll get to that game a little later in the program tonight. Of course, at 7:30, we are going to recap Week 8's games, and at 7:44 we'll turn to the games that are coming up this week, and then we will be done after that, and you can go on and enjoy your night. But of course, we want to continue with this. Pitt. I want to talk about Pittsburgh. Um, at the time when their games, it's Kurt that they won last week against Clemson. In regards to it at the beginning of the season, this was a high-profile matchup. Now, where do you feel like this win against Clemson? Do you think it's a vital win for Pitt, or do you think that this has turned into just another cake game?
Uh, I think it might be a little bit of a cake game, but
Okay.
we won't know until we see the game, I think.
Well, I mean, Pitt and Clemson played last week, and Clemson got beat 27 to I think it was 27 to 17 the final score. In Pitt played a good game. So when we get to the end of the season, where do you feel Clemson is going to be as a program? Do you think there's going to be any
I
improvement,
think
or
it's
do you
just a
think they're
down
going to be
season.
in? Okay.
I think
Um.
since this season they haven't been doing well, I think next season, this season I think is more like a couple years ago for Alabama when LSU won. Alabama had a down season. Everyone thought that they were going to be done, but then the next year they come back and they destroy the competition.
Okay. I tend to agree. I think Clemson's in a I think they're
Down
just in a
season.
down
Plus,
season.
there's probably stuff going on in a locker, like the whole Matt Will situation. I think.
Yeah, and
Well,
that's a big story. So we're gonna go ahead and quit reacting to the rankings and turn to Matt Wells, and he was the head coach of Texas Tech the last few years. He turns around, and this season he gets fired after I believe it was a 5-3 record he had this season with
yeah,
Texas Tech.
I think it was definitely locker issues.
Locker room issues. Okay. So, Colson, let me ask you, what is the future of Matt Wells?
I think he could go to teams like LSU or USU or USC. I think he's a good coach. He deserves a job.
Okay.
I will say LSU or USD seems like a bit too big of a job for him. But if he did get hired there, it could be like another Ed Orgeron situation. He didn't deserve to go there. He just went there because he was available.
Okay. Um, in my opinion, I think Matt Wells is going to be one of these guys that ends up, like, let's say you have like a Kyle Whittingham who decides, you know what, I think I'm going to leave Utah and go to USC. Do you think Matt Wells would take the Utah job?
Possibly. But I don't see that happening.
Okay. And then another guy I feel like for USC that would be a perfect fit, bring Pete Carroll back. I mean, the Seahawks are
That's
in
not
a.
going to happen.
Okay, explain to me how this is not going to happen.
Because Pete Carroll's a great coach at the Seahawks. I just don't see it happening.
Okay, I will point out to you, um, since last year starting real well, and I'll look this up to give you accurate information, but I believe that they have been in one of the I mean in a down like one maybe the worst team in the NFC West this
Well,
season. They're
that's just
two and
because they're
five. The Seattle
well,
Seahawks.
their quarterback got hurt, and now who do they have on their offense?
Well, I mean, you still got okay. So you still got DK Metcalf, who is arguably maybe the best receiver in the NFL. Arguably the best receiver in the NFL. And I will say, you're probably right. They don't have anything else besides Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf. They didn't invest in really going out and getting any kind of offensive line. You still have the same kind of offensive line as you did um, as you did last year, which was kind of poor after midway through the season. Um, so in regards to how the Seahawks have done, I feel like it would be about time to part ways. Now, of course, before the bye week, they were undefeated last year, 5-0. After going 5-0 last year, I believe they finished the season at just a couple games over 500 at 7-5. Because I'm looking at the schedule, they came out of the bye and lost 37-34 to Arizona, beat San Francisco, lost to Buffalo, lost to LA Rams, beat Arizona, beat Philadelphia, lost to the New York Giants, beat the Jets, beat Washington, beat the LA Rams, and beat San Francisco. And then they turned around in the NFC wild card round and got beat to the Los Angeles Rams for, I believe that was it was a second time in the season. So, I will ask you about, like, do you think that, okay, and in tallying how after going 5-0 last year, the Seahawks ended up being, and if I did this right, 9-10 since starting 5-0 before the bye week of the 2020 season. Do you think do you think the Seahawks have a case for firing Pete Carroll then?
Mm, no, I don't think there's a way they'll get rid of Pete Carroll.
All right. Well, that is it with our Matt Wells talk. It is 7:29. Now, Colton is sitting in a room where he can keep up with the Astros and the Braves. So, for any of our viewers who are interested in seeing the score of the Braves and the Astros, Colton, it's time for update time. Give us an update.
It's 2-0 Atlanta.
2-0 Atlanta. Thank you, Colton. Of course, we are live during the World Series. Of course, baseball used to be. I mean, you're talking about the World Series. You were talking about bigger than the Super Bowl at one time in the United States of America. Of course, things
Who's your
change over time.
source?
Huh?
Who's your source on that?
Common sense, because before the Super Bowl was a thing, I mean,
Well, that
everybody in
shouldn't
the United
count.
States watched the World Series.
That doesn't count.
Okay. Okay. Now let's turn to recapping last week's games. And of course, let me pull this up. So, of course, we had some big games. Well, not really big games. Last week was kind of a down week in regards to the weeks prior to last week. Of course, as I turn around to the recapping, Colton, give me your what did you think about the Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State? I mean, it was a Wednesday night game. What did you think?
I think it was a pretty good game. I think that Coastal definitely should have won, judging that they were up by so much. But Appalachian State won, and it was a pretty interesting game.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I mean, they gave the game in the second half. I mean, you're looking at this, and it was not a good time for Coastal during the second half. I mean, giving up so much to Appalachian State. But you got to give credit where credit's due, and that's towards Appalachian State. I mean, knocking off a team that was 14th in the country who dropped to 24 after that. I mean, congratulations to Appalachian State. I mean, they accomplished getting another win. Big win, too. I mean, you're talking about Appalachian State for the last few years were the team that was, I mean, they were the big time team in that conference. So, congratulations, Appalachian State, for, grabbing themselves a big win against the Coastal Carolina team who looked like they were going to run away with the conference this year.
Yeah. And
Okay.
the game was overall just very one-sided until the very end, and Appalachian State definitely deserved to win after coming back.
Okay, another big game that was in the early slate on Saturday was Cincinnati and Navy. Now this game got interesting at the end because Navy kicked an onside kick, ultimately recovered by Navy. Then Navy decides to throw the football, which is very uncommon for Navy or Army or one of these military schools. And Navy ended up throwing an interception, and Cincinnati closed the game. What do you think about Cincinnati after getting some big wins and having to go to Navy? What do you think about them almost squandering that game?
I, I don't think they would have lost either way because it is Cincinnati. But I think that they could have played a little better.
Okay. Well, looking at some of these other games, of course, we were talking a little bit about Wake Forest and Army, but what did you think about that high scoring game, though? I mean, do you think that we should be worrying about Wake Forest's defense right now?
Probably not, but they could have done a little better.
Okay. Of course, we're going to preview the upcoming games in just a moment. We got a couple more we want to talk about, and that is Illinois and Penn State. What did you think about that 9 overtime thriller?
I think, well, I didn't watch the game, but I heard that it was an interesting game, and it should not have lasted as long.
Yeah, and I watched some of the clips from it. I mean, I didn't watch it either, but it was a game where Penn State could have had a chance earlier in those overtimes to win the game. Couldn't do it. Illinois had a shot. They couldn't do it, and it took 9 overtimes, the longest game in FBS history, to come out with a W. Illinois. And do you think that Brett Bielema was the right choice for Illinois?
Yeah, I think give it a couple years and they might just be in the playoff.
Wow, big expectations for Illinois. You talk about Brett Bielema being back in the Big Ten, where of course he coached Wisconsin and he was dominant. Talk about him in Wisconsin, Colton. I mean, you had Russell Wilson at one time. That was great football, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, Brett Bielema has always been big on the run game. Run game has always been big in Brett Bielema football. So, big win for Illinois Saturday. Northwestern and Michigan. Michigan handles business against Northwestern like they should have, and they go into the Michigan State game undefeated. Colton, what did you think about this game?
I thought it was interesting. It, like I said, it was also I did not watch that one, and it also what I heard it was not as interesting to watch.
Okay. Of course, there were so many other games. Oklahoma and Kansas. And before we get into any kind of commentary about this game, Caleb Williams, the quarterback, at one time during this game, to close it out, his running back, and I believe it's Kennedy Brooks, he gets stopped behind the line, but before the refs could blow the whistles, Caleb Williams takes the ball from Kennedy Brooks and gains a first down. What do you think about that play?
I'm not gonna say it was a penalty, but it was a forward pass, and it it was kind of a controversial call, definitely.
Well, there was no call. Caleb Williams took the football from Kennedy Brooks, ended up getting a first down. Of course, they'd go on to score a touchdown and win the game 35-23. So Oklahoma survived Kansas. So, I mean, it is what it is in that game. Of course, looking at some other games, Wisconsin, put a beating on Purdue after Purdue came off a big win against Iowa. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where they could have done better if they just played harder.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Wisconsin, they lost a bunch of big games against ranked teams. That I mean, you're looking at Wisconsin. You're thinking if they win all of these big games, you're looking at the playoff for Wisconsin right now. I mean, they could easily be number 2 right now, just behind Georgia. If they would have taken care of business against Penn State, what probably would have beat Notre Dame. Of course, I mean, there's a lot of season left. This week they go up against Iowa. What's your expectations about this game?
Well, I don't know if it's going to be very interesting to watch. All I know is that Iowa will win this game.
Okay. Um, Oregon UCLA. Big. It was the top game of the week, and Oregon barely comes out with a win. Of course, they were up 34-17 at a point and almost lost. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, I think bit of a it was a bit of an interesting game, but I think it could have ended a little bit better instead of just ending on like a very I don't want to say like controversial, like a weird play.
Okay, and so that will cover most of what we were coming to with the recapping. Of course, another one we want to talk about is Iowa State taking down Oklahoma State. Colton, this was a good game to watch. What did you think?
Yeah, I wanted Oklahoma State to stay undefeated. I think that they still deserve to be high on the radar, and I think that they still could be in the playoffs if they continue to win. This is minor detour.
Okay.
Oklahoma's still going to beat Iowa State.
Okay. So of course there were many more games in the day. So you look at it, it was a good week of football around. I mean, considering, coming in, we didn't think we had much, but of course, we got some good football. So, of course, we did want to preview this week's games. And the first one I want to preview, though, it's Saturday, and of course, we want to preview some good games this week. And you got Michigan State as the top game of the week. Ole Miss and Auburn's an interesting game. And Penn State, Ohio State's a big game. So, and then another one I do want to mention, Virginia and BYU. Bronco Mendenhall is back at BYU for the first time in a long time, since he was a great coach there. Of course, Kalani Sitake doing great things for BYU. Could have been in the playoff last year. Controversial, of course. So, I do want to start, though, with Auburn and Ole Miss. What do you expect from this game?
I think it's an interesting game. I think it might be a little bit controversial just because it's Auburn, Ohio State. The mustard thing hopefully will not happen this week, but I think it might happen again. It's a very controversial game.
So you think Ole Miss could roll into Auburn, and then Auburn fans get agitated and start throwing
I think there's going to be some
golf balls
Tennessee fans. There's going to be Tennessee fans just wanting to get payback in Ole Miss, and they're probably going to sneak in at Auburn clothing, and they're just going to come on in, make their way to the closest they can to the Ole Miss locker, and just throw it.
And I do want to ask you about, like, how does golf balls and mustard, all this stuff you see coming to that stadium, at Neyland. How in the world does a golf ball get in a football stadium?
Well, it might have like already been there. I think it might have been there already, and they just saw it and decided to throw it. And the mustard thing, they might have hid the mustard somewhere, like ahead of time, and then when they got past security, or they might have like tossed it through security and picked it up after they got through security. They could have done plenty of things.
Well, in my time of going to football games, I remember that. I mean, let me take it for example, going to an Alabama football game because we have been to Alabama football games before. Going into the stadium, you can't even take a bottle of water in
Or a blanket.
or a
And they
blanket.
get to take the blanket out and they like search it.
Right. So basically, what I was coming to though is Alabama's so strict that you have to pour the water out because they don't know if people are bringing in alcohol or whatnot coming into that stadium. And then as far as like the blanket, you don't know if a gun's wrapped up in there or whatnot. So Alabama does a great job with security, let me tell you. And I
Yeah.
mean, it may be irritating to a fan who is not going to do any of that, but they have, if for security measures they do it anyway. For Neyland though, I've never been there. I don't know how their security is. But I will say though, if a golf ball gets into the stadium, I mean,
Somebody needs to check that security system.
yeah, that's what I'm about to say though. I mean, I don't think the security's doing its job if in regards to having golf balls in the stadium. I mean, someone's not doing their jobs somehow. I'll be honest. If you see a golf ball in a bag coming to that stadium, I'm probably taking that in case, if there are people that are thinking about throwing it at the field, that can be very dangerous. So,
Yeah.
We'll see what happens though with Tennessee. Of course, there's a lot going on with Tennessee. So, and they are finally probably back in football. Josh Heupel was the right hire. Finally, Tennessee's got themselves a pretty decent coach. Of course, I don't believe they should have fired Butch Jones when they did, but they did. So,
It's another like Gus Malzahn situation. They fired him because the fans were getting tired of him overall. And it's not because they're a bad coach. It's because the fans are getting tired of him. And plus the players, and there's all this going on.
Okay, Penn State and Ohio State. This game before Illinois went into Penn State and beat them, this was looking like it was going to be a game where you could consider it. One team could end up going to the playoff, and one could be eliminated. Ohio State still could, but let me ask you: do you think Penn State could pull off an upset here?
Yeah, I think they might. It's a very weird game, but
Well, I
excuse
will
me.
say, stranger things have happened
Yeah.
in the football season. Of
Plus,
course,
I think Ohio State's a bit overrated this season, especially. And I don't like Ohio State ever, really. I think Penn State's got this game, I think. But I still think I'm voting for Penn State, but I think Ohio State's going to win this one.
Okay. And looking at Penn State, of course, I think it was a few years ago they were unranked, playing at home against Ohio State and end up beating them. So, you look at it, it could happen again. Who knows?
Yeah.
Of course, Michigan and Michigan State. What do you think, Colton?
It's just a weird game to me. I don't know who's gonna win. It's one of those games where you don't know who's gonna win until the game's over, and then you think, oh yeah, that team was definitely gonna win from the start.
All right. And that is it for previewing football games this week. Of course, here on the network we've got a lot coming up. Be on the lookout because either tomorrow or Thursday night we may be coming with another live stream or video So be on the lookout for that. And then Saturday, we'll be back with college football wraparound. Tuesday night, we'll be back here to give you the first edition of the CFP rankings. We'll be here to break it down for you, give you all that you need to know, like we're doing tonight. Then we'll be back Thursday night, a special Thursday night, because we will the next Saturday, that Tuesday after Saturday, November 6th, we will give you a little recap on what it was like to go to an Ole Miss football game, because we will be there at Ole Miss Vaught Hemingway Stadium for none other than the Hugh Freeze's return to the Grove.
Yeah.
Colton, any expectations for that game?
Well, I do. I don't have much of expectations, but I have something to tell you, Cooper.
Yes.
You should definitely do like a video of going to that game, or like vlog it or something.
Yeah, honestly, that sounds like a
That'd
fun job.
get
like
hundreds
like
of views.
take my phone and do a vlog of it. That would be really cool. And especially maybe giving you like a shot from inside the stadium. Of course, they'll let you bring your phone in. Of course.
Well,
you know.
as long as your phone is identified, it should be able to go in.
Yeah.
Unless you have like your phone wrapped up in a blanket or like hidden.
Yeah.
Then they'd be a bit sketched out over it, and they'd probably take it.
Well, I gotta say though, even though I think Ole Miss will probably win this game very easily, I think Hugh Freeze coming back to the Grove is going to be an interesting sight. I don't know how that reception is going to come over. Ole Miss fans, if you're an Ole Miss fan and you're watching, we're coming to the Grove, and we're coming to see you. It'll be a fun game to go see. So, of course, we'll be doing our stream that Thursday night before the game. So, you can't miss us. So, with that, that is going to end our stream for the night. Thanks for watching, everybody. And thank you, Colton, for coming on with me. It's been
You're
fun
welcome.
chatting with you for a little bit.
Yes. I'll see you soon.
All right. And with that, that is College Football Wraparound CFP Ranking Show tonight. And we'll be back next week. Good night, everybody.